We just got done seeing Transcendence. I'm Paul. This is
Mr. Pierre DuPont.
Mr. Pierre DuPont, a new addition to our Night at the Theatah crew here. And tonight, as I said, we just saw Transcendence, the new Johnny Depp picture, directed by Christopher Nolan's director of photography. His name is Wally Pfister. It is his directorial debut, and he sure made something, didn't he?
I don't know if it was a movie or if that was that was a warning or if that was a biblical tale of the future. It was an experience.
Yes, I feel like this was co-written by Nostradamus' ghost. To a certain degree.
Ghost-written.
Yeah, exactly. Ghost written by Nostradamus' ghost. And it's a really, really good movie, I have got to say. We'll get into why. We'll get into why. And by the way, spoilers. We're gonna be going through this movie a little bit, and we're gonna be discussing just a bit about some of the things that it touches upon, some of the things that looked really, really cool in terms of its cinematography. We're gonna be talking about it's just how it is as a movie. So, Pierre, why don't we start off with a recap of just what went on in this movie?
Alright, so when we start off the movie, we're introduced to the characters of Will Castor and his wife Evelyn Castor, two promising researchers in the field of neurosciences and artificial intelligence.
Indeed.
So, at the beginning of the movie, we see relevant plot points, I guess, come up in a very sort of subtle way, but mass as a sort of look into our society as it is now. Mm-hmm. And that's done through a sort of presentation that he's giving to a crowd of people in a hall. Mm-hmm. Shortly after that, he comes out of the place, does a couple of autographs, and then ends up getting shot.
Yeah, with radiation bullets.
Yeah.
Spoiler! As I said, spoilers in this video. Yeah, he gets shot by radiation bullets. It's really quite hilarious because there's absolutely nothing they can do for him, and it's just, no, you've been shot by, cancer bullet, and you got 4 weeks to live, man. You just been shot and you got 4 weeks to live. And so we get into the movie a little bit more proper when we start seeing his wife Evelyn trying to figure out a way to save her husband and looking into the AI that he's been building for the past 10 years, I think they said. The name of the AI is PINN, P-I-N-N. I don't remember what it's an acronym for, but I'm sure it was cool. And she gets this bright idea of uploading his consciousness using the electrical patterns that your brains produce and sort of digitizing them into... It's the idea of taking a pre-existing brain and turning it into an artificial intelligence, and she decides to do this to her dying husband, who has been shot by a terrorist organization / cult that is dedicated to the stopping of the advancement of technology.
Pretty much unplugging humanity.
It sounds a little silly when you say it out loud. It sounds science fiction-y. This sounds like something that would go into a science fiction plot that's a little older than it was. This movie feels a little older than it was. A little older than it is, and I think that comes out a lot in the fact that it's shot on film.
But the caveat here is that, we speak of it as science fiction, but yeah. I think the really scary part of this movie and the really disturbing part is that by this point in our lives as a society and as humans, that's more science reality probably within the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
we're all pretty connected as it is right now, but we're going to get into that in a minute because we haven't even gotten to that part yet. But, so she decides to, she and her friend, who is this person who has been, it's a third scientist who's been helping them with their work. He's not part of the family, but he's the friend to the family sort of thing. His name is Max, I believe it was. And we get to see him and his whole ethical problems with this thing, because he's you probably saw it in the trailers, but he's the one who's vying to have it shut off because it doesn't feel right to him. There's a lot of things in this movie that just naturally don't feel right, but he's the first person to sort of bring up the idea that no, there's something really, really wrong here. We have no evidence that this is actually Will here. We have no evidence at all that this is your husband. It's got his memories. It's got a layout of his personality. he's basically implying that Pin is almost using Will as a tool to become self-aware. Like, Will was the beginning of its basic idea of becoming self-aware, like truly self-aware, and it just sort of tried to run with it. It developed its own consciousness, it developed its own sense of right and wrong, and it was sort of moving. It's left really, really ambiguous, or at least the movie tries to leave it really, really ambiguous throughout the film as to whether or not there is any nobility to what Pin or Will is doing in this film, but a lot of the movie tends to allude to the idea that it's sinister, but we'll except up until the ending, but again, we'll get to that. So Will is now in the computer, and he's basically become a sort of Skynet kind of thing. He's developed a nanotechnology that's helped him heal a bunch of people. Him and his wife buy up a whole bunch of land, and they develop this complex that's all their own, and they start just like healing people. He heals a blind person. There's a guy who gets beaten almost to death and stabbed almost to death just outside of the complex, and they bring him in, and the nanomachines fix him. And it's this really drawn-out scene where there's just the nanomachines are webbing through his skin and just fixing everything. And it's played almost like an infection, but it's healing him. It's doing something good, but it looks really, really dark and really, really sinister. So this all turns into Rift, the terrorist organization that we mentioned, teaming up with the military, and basically Will losing all of his friends as he starts to do fairly ethically gray area-ish kind of things with his technology in the name of improving society. And the whole idea is he's got the very cold, calculating, like almost like a surgical mentality to what is right and wrong, and a problem and not a problem with the human condition, and he's trying to fix it through making everyone sort of interconnected with his nanomachines and unifying them to his collective consciousness, kind of like a Borg thing. And that's more or less what this movie's about. Evelyn becomes the protagonist and has to stop her husband, even though throughout almost the entire movie she pretty much doesn't want to. She's wrestling with herself, but I really, really have to give it to Rebecca Hall here. She gave a really damn fine performance of a person who was just lost in the ethical problems of something that she and her husband, someone she cared about more than anyone else in the world, something that they were building for so long, and to see it go so horribly wrong. It's a classic story, and it's a classic character to write, but I have to give it to Rebecca Hall. Great performance. Johnny Depp did pretty good too. At first I thought he was kind of sleepwalking through his role. He was very, I'm bland, I'm Johnny Depp, I'm walking around, and science is cool and it's interesting, and you should listen to me because I like science and therefore I know really cool, interesting things. But it all kind of changes when he dies. You've been kind of quiet. Why don't you sort of...
Well, okay. I guess my opinion on Johnny Depp's character, I mean, yeah, he was typecast as, Johnny Depp, in pretty much a lab coat. But a lot of things that people miss about scientists, most scientists are pretty introverted people to begin with, right? So, to have a sort of quiet, quirky character or quirky person like Johnny Depp assume that role, it made sense towards, the first 20 minutes of the film. Once he got past that barrier, I felt like I was okay with him.
I really wouldn't call him quirky. He's quirky. He's as quirky as a robot that really loves science could be.
Yeah, I guess. More quiet, I think, would be the word I'm going for here. He's definitely no Jack Sparrow in this movie.
He's a science machine. He's a guy who knows one thing really, really, really well. He just happens to, be a rock star for it. Scientists should be rock stars. Like, this guy's, the coolest. But, when he's out there signing autographs and he's all sly about it, you actually do believe his friend Max when he says, oh, he secretly loves it and pretends he doesn't. You get that from him, but for the rest of it, it's very cold and very sort of withdrawn.
Yeah, for a man who spent his life work trying to connect people or, connect to a higher higher sort of understanding. It kind of makes me wonder, that scene where he highlights that dead zone garden that he's building, right? That one place of serenity that he can be where he's not connected to the outside world, where he can just be alone with his thoughts or alone with his wife. It's very weird to see that and then see him go on this sort of rampant mission after he transcends, let's say. And it's at that point where you realize that it's Pin doing the directing. It's no longer Depp's character. It's no longer Mr. Castor.
You could make the claim to say that the garden is almost like his humanity. Like, he's building something to strip away the influence of technology at the beginning. It's very small and it's very confined. But then, yes, what you said is true. When he becomes Pin, when he becomes the AI Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp, whatever you want to call him, he goes grand with it. Like, he builds this complex, like, with this valley of solar panels. And
it's a very binary switch, too. I mean, you see it when they first even turn on the computer. That processor isn't enough for him. That information highway is just not enough to satiate him. At that point, as soon as he's in the machine, he is a machine.
The idea that humanity has a preconceived sort of idea as to where the threshold of advancement should be is a big thing in this movie. A lot of people treat what's happening in this movie as I said, inherently wrong and rather foreign, and the film treats it like that as well, in the fact that people are just generally made uncomfortable by Johnny Depp's AI character in this movie.
But if I may interject for a second, even before we're introduced to Depp's character, I noticed the movie carried that theme of, celerity, of, not in connectedness. First, they introduced us with celerity. People were plugged in, but they were not interacting with each other. We had lots of shots of people with headphones plugged in, typing away at keyboards, not interfacing with each other. And then, all of a sudden, that's, it's...
kaboom.
Yeah.
An explosion that changes everything.
And there's, there's that literal explosion, and then there's the metaphorical explosion of, oh my god, what are we doing here?
Well, that's a nice alignment of imagery there. It's really, really nice. What were you saying? You were talking about the explosion. Yeah,
the explosion, like the physical explosion with Morgan Freeman in the office, and he's still plugged in, and he doesn't manage to even hear it through his earbuds, right? So I mean that even implies a sort of not even just that he's not auditorily perceiving the world, he's completely tuning it out, and only when he sees the rubble around him does it really click in with him that something is wrong. It's a very shock scenario kind of thing where he still has to take everything in, and just like you as an audience had to take in the gravity of what was happening, and then they kind of milk that feeling throughout the movie. I see.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments in this movie that just last for an instant, like that explosion, and that one moment that just completely turned the tone of this movie completely around. Because at the very beginning, we start out at the very beginning of Johnny Depp's whole AI tirade. We start out seeing him doing wonderful, wonderful things for people, and he's healing people, and everything's really, really cool. And he winds up saving this guy's life, and he's bleeding out, and he's almost about to die. And then there's a moment where his wife runs into that guy while he's lifting an 800-pound turbine thing.
Solar panel.
Yeah, solar panel. He's lifting an 800-pound solar panel and putting it up on this peg, and he's shown to be physically stronger, and he's shown to be physically more resilient, and he takes off his hat, and he's got this almost like a lobotomy scar right up here.
Let's actually note that we saw that scar right after that procedure was done, but we got no illusion as to what it was. It was very weird because the rest of his body was repaired in that scene, but they deliberately left that
one deformity up here, and it looked more like a deformity at the beginning. It's just and then it sort of turned more into a chasm sort of thing.
Like a receiver of sorts, pretty much.
Yeah, it's kind of it's got sort of the nanomachines embedded in the chasm.
Very metallic, kind of.
It's like a wound that just won't heal, and then he speaks in Johnny Depp's voice, and that's when you go, stop. You lost me.
When did that happen?
You were doing really well. Really super well. And then, no, it's a complete tone shift. that's when we start getting into Johnny Depp as this movie's movie monster, because as they're talking about the idea that this might not be Johnny Depp, we start to see that no, this really, really, really might not be Johnny Depp. There's Morgan Freeman in this movie plays basically, I think he was the money, or he was a sort of liaison sort of thing.
Yeah, well, an intermediary.
Yeah, he was sort of an intermediary between like people who would be discussing contracts with them for their technology, and
So Lucius Fox again.
yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
much.
he's playing Lucius Fox in
Pretty
this
much.
in this Christopher Nolan involved movie. Christopher Nolan executive produced this, or assistant produced this. That's hilarious. But there's a scene in this movie in which Morgan Freeman is talking to Pin when she's still Pin, and says, "Pin, can you prove that you're self-aware?" And Pin says, "I don't know. Can you prove that you're self-aware?" And there's a scene later on in which Morgan Freeman says again to Johnny Depp's character, "Are you self-aware? Or can you prove that you're self-aware?" And Johnny Depp mimics the very same statement made by Pin. And that's the moment where you realize that there might be more Pin and Johnny Depp in this movie than there is Johnny Depp anymore. And so this movie portrays a sort of very, very fine line between what is clear-cut humanity and what is, I guess you could call it like a techno-humanity. They call them hybrids in this movie, the people that have been healed and are, like, you know, being worked by these nanomachines. So the climax was a little bit rushed. I mean, Rift kidnaps Max throughout this movie, and it's slowly been showing him just how wrong some of the things that Johnny Depp's character can make, just how bad Johnny Depp's character can fuck things up in this scenario, and he winds up helping them. And he teams up with Zoe from House of Cards in order to stop his good friend, and he's still trying to save Johnny Depp's wife because it's never outwardly stated that he's romantically interested in her, but it's shown that he cares about her a lot.
Yeah, well, he cares for her quite a lot. Like,
yeah, he's sort of like he's sort of like the humanity that never really leaves her, even though they stay really rather disconnected throughout the film in terms of distance and in terms of where they are and everything. But in terms of the trio that they've put forward in the beginning of this film, he's very much the grounded in humanity, grounded in sense sort of character. And so he comes in with the military, and he comes in with Rift, and he comes in with everyone for the big climax at the OK Corral that he built with his solar panels. And Johnny Depp has built himself a nanomachine body, and Johnny Depp basically winds up killing himself because his wife has had a virus put into I think it was
reverse engineered
Yeah.
nanomachines from well, actually it was the first guy we showed to get
Yeah.
we were showing upon Augmented, that guy who was
Foreign
controlled.
nanomachines encoded with a virus designed to destroy Pin, and basically everything that he's touched. And at this point, Pin has put his nanomachines in the rain, in the air, and in the water. There's nothing that Pin has not touched. And so the ramifications of this virus is complete global blackout,
Y2K.
which they showed at the beginning of the movie. Thanks. That's one gripe I have about this movie.
Kind of gave
So
away the ending.
Now I know how this movie ends.
Yeah, with the collapse of technological civilization.
There's a friggin' shot in that intro in which someone like uses a keyboard as a doorstop.
That was kind of
Heavy-handed.
When I first saw that scene, I was like, man, that poor laptop.
I know.
And then, you know, I by the end of that movie, seeing that very same scene played again, you know, of course, one part of me being a techie, I was always going to say, oh man, that poor laptop. But another part of me really, really, really wanted all that connectiveness to go away.
Yeah. Like I said, there's something inherently sinister about everything in this movie. And like I said, in the end, Johnny Depp winds up killing himself with this virus. Or does he? It's really, really left... Because in the very last shot, the very last fucking shot, we see a puddle and just the nanomachines sort of coming up into the air in their very cloudy, wispy sort of way that they've done throughout this entire movie. And we're like, is he dead? We don't know. I hope this movie doesn't get a sequel. I really, really don't want that to be sequel baiting. This movie, other than that slightly confused ending, we'll talk about why it's a little confused in a second. I really, really liked this movie. I have to say, I said it before, I'll say it again. I liked this movie. How about you, man?
I've got to say, I loved it. My gripes were very, very far and few in between.
You're a sound guy. Like, do you have any gripes with the sound or anything like that?
Sound-wise, you know what? No. I've got to say, the sound was very, very well done. A lot of, sort of tranquil, like, soundtracks playing in the background. The music was never put in the forefront.
It's very methodical.
Yeah, it was very much meant to put you in this sort of trance-like state, keep you focused in the movie. It was very good at choice of sound.
Yeah.
It was the effects the sound effects that got me more so than the actual background music.
Oh, you mean the film crackle?
Oh, the film crackle.
I loved that! Oh my god! I heard film crackle and I said, ah!
And I mean, for us to hear that now in this day and age is it's a rarity, it's a treat. And I mean, it calls back to...
Like I said, this movie's shot on fucking 35mm anamorphic film. That's amazing. People don't do that anymore. And it looks beautiful.
And there's also a symbolic reason as to why it was done too. This whole movie was about the invasiveness of technology, and how things can be replicated with technology.
Yeah,
we're living in a world that's increasingly unoriginal and increasingly becoming just copies of itself, increasingly becoming connected and losing its humanity. So, by seeing this movie shot on film rather than shot digitally, we get a call back to that old-style cinematography, the tried-and-true method that encapsulates the humanity of film. Yeah. I mean, they could have put in that film crackle digitally, and it would have been almost identical, and we wouldn't have noticed it. But that wasn't the point. It was putting the effort into the movie, and putting the effort into the film, and the effort into the sound, that made it seem like it was an effort to get a message out.
Absolutely. I mean, we should probably give context on this. When there's all these scenes, if you've seen the trailers, you've seen these scenes of the nanomachines floating up from the ground in these big, windy wisps, and they're going up into the clouds, and it's rising up and rising up. Whenever you see that, you hear film crackle, just a... It's almost like a Slender Man kind of thing, where these things are on the screen and it's actually upsetting the world. It's like the film is the world that you're watching and it's just disrupting it. It's just foreign and it's just grating. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of film. It's a beautiful piece of filmmaking technique. Oh my god, I squealed so hard when I saw that.
Definitely sends a message that it just does not belong there, right?
No, it doesn't.
It does not belong in the world of the film, and it most certainly does not belong in our world. At least that is what the film is trying to convey here.
Well, the technology itself is rather benign. I mean, it's being used to help people, and that's part of the point. But it's the problem with the AI. It's the ghost in the machine that's the movie monster here. This isn't a horror movie, but it definitely has a monster, and that monster is definitely Johnny Depp's whole Ghost in the Shell thing going on here. It's it can be anywhere. It can be in your cell phone, it can be on your laptop. He knows what kind of porn you watch. He knows who you texted lately. He's everywhere, and that's scary.
Yeah, and I mean, it's scary enough that now we live in a day and age where, we're connected to everyone and we almost have no secrets. I mean, most of our little thoughts and tidbits are posted online to Facebook without a second thought from us, right?
We treat a bulletin board style website as a journal. It's almost considered to be a journal now. Your Facebook is considered to be like your diary.
Yeah, well, and that's funny, is that before your diary was something you kept under lock and key.
Yeah.
Now your diary is something you want everyone to see. And it's not even that you consciously want it, it's that you need to do it. That sort of narcissistic kind of personality has started to develop in everyone, where they need to be...
We're okay with this.
we're okay with it because it's been gradually introduced.
Yeah.
The
world does seem to want that interconnected society, that connected humanity, but it looks like Mr. Pfister here, I love his last name, his last name is Pfister. I think he's saying, yeah, that interconnected society that you guys really, really seem to want,
this is where it's gonna lead.
Here's the tails end of that coin. You flip that coin, here's tails. Here's the bad thing that happens during what you want there. And it's just, I love that sort of cautionary tale sort of quality. It's why Planet of the Apes is my favorite movie, because that twist at the end, it just gets you, and you're not entirely sure as to whether or not what you saw was right or wrong. There's so many, there are layers to what the movie's trying to bring to you, and those layers aren't always pretty. And this movie's got that. It's got the layers on layers of things that it's trying to talk about, and none of them are really pretty. In fact, they're really quite uncomfortable sometimes.
And there's stuff we never, ever discuss. I mean, we do most of the stuff that we do now without a second thought, as I said before. I mean, if you try to talk to someone who was born post-1996 or 1997, what have you...
And you try to tell them something's not a good idea, they're going to say YOLO and do it anyway.
Yeah, and not even the YOLO part, but to tell them not to connect in the way that they do, because...
Society changed.
Society became increasingly digital, right? We become more comfortable talking online, in these vast social networks where we can be quickly connected to like-minded people than in, small select groups of people in our physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this movie is, trying to warn us of, is the dangers of, being interconnected and, trying to, hive mind ourselves with other people all the time. Humanity is meant to be an individual thing, an individual experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we have our physical networks, and the way we physically talk to people influences how we live our individual lives, but trying to do it the way that we're going right now, I think it's too invasive.
We are inventing glasses with computers in them.
Well, Google Glass, it's augmented reality, and this movie is really the tale of the end game of augmented reality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have augmented reality in the form of, we have a screen overlay that projects over our world, but symbolically that is the start.
Yeah.
We are having, our real world supplemented with digital information. We have digital aids to supplement our natural thinking. We don't have to wait a day for the paper, for some guy to, phone another guy and then run the headlight and then print it out. We get that direct onto our phones.
Oh yeah.
And
we barely need newspapers anymore. You can pull up your phone and read the newspaper. Like on the internet, you can get an entire day's worth of news just on your Facebook feed, just from the various magazines and news outlets that you subscribe to.
Yeah, and see, Transcendence to me, when it speaks to me, Transcendence is a movie about talking about, where we're going with ideas like phones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, back, maybe 7 years ago or whatever,
Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago, before the iPhone era, a phone was a communication tool, and that's what the internet is primarily used for now. But it was strictly for just communication, to meet up physically with someone later, or
cell phones were neat because they were small and you can put them in your pocket.
Yeah, but now we've found that phones have become mobile computers. They've become very much a gateway to anything digital, commerce.
It's sci-fi tech.
Yeah, pretty much.
It is. I always like to joke whenever I have my iPad out, yeah, I'm working with Dot Matrix's flat-faced computer here from Reboot, from way before tablets were ever a thing. Yeah, Reboot called tablets, I'm just going to say that right now, but that has nothing to do with anything. It's just, in the end, technology always seems to be evolving, and that's a big thing in this film. Technology in and of itself is treated almost like an entity that evolves parallel with humans, and this is the diverging point. This is the point where there's the uncomfortable mix, that one uncomfortable crossing, and then just the something's gotta give sort of thing.
Yeah, we get the branch from, the humanity a la carte, and then, technologically enhanced humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much mirrors, the split of Homo sapiens from the apes, and stuff like that. It's the next logical advancement, right? And I mean, in practice, this has already happened. Coming back to the mobile phone, I often say that the mobile phone is the first technological organ, and I wouldn't be too far from from the truth there.
It's an extension of your hand sometimes at this point.
I know, and it is a window into our digital world. But it's a shame we even have to call
our
digital
world
anything
a
digital world. We have a perfectly fine physical world that we could choose to live and interact with, but we constantly find ourselves supplementing our lives, and in some cases completely replacing our lives with a digital community. Don't like your current circle of friends? Well, you can find an artist-focused community if you're an artist on DeviantArt and just live your life there. We have people who live their lives in Warcraft. We have people who
review movies on the internet.
Yeah, because that's where most people are nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're gonna, go and call their friends and watch a TV show together. It's not like they're gonna go, to a public community center and see some guy do a presentation on stage.
The point is technology is constantly in a parallel evolutionary race with humanity, and in the end, this is the point where something had to give. This is the negative outcome of that parallel race and that very fragile balance that we've cultivated, in which technology has always been designed to help humanity be humanity at its very best. And this technology is portrayed that way in its practical application. It's its subtle application. It's the mind behind the technology that is considered to be the monster here. And so, as I was thinking to myself earlier, if we were to have seen a Facebook update on our walls about this new nanotechnology that could make blind people see, we'd be sharing the crap out of it and saying what a fantastic idea it is. The technology in and of itself is not evil. It is neutral.
Yeah, it's the application that the technology is put towards.
Yeah. It's, in the end, this movie is about, just how much of Will Castor was still left in this program, and how much of it was the program. And in the end, the ending kind of showed a little bit too much of Will in it, for my taste, at least for the rest of for the rest of how the movie was being painted in terms of its tone. But in the end, it looked great. It was written really, really well. It was well produced, well directed. It showed its cards a little bit too much in some of the dialogue, but I've got no real substantial complaints in which I could say that I didn't enjoy this. I really quite loved it. It might be my favorite movie of the year so far. Go see it.
I've got nothing to say. I mean, I've been pretty much silent this whole review because there really is there's nothing bad to say about this movie. The only thing you can gain from this movie is an insight into the life we currently live and where this life may take us.
Yeah.
It can take us some really, really great places. It can take us some very, very dark places. I'm of the personal opinion that we need to be responsible with the technology that we use every day. I feel that, where there is an opportunity to do something in a more human-like way, you should always grasp to be able to do that, because we find that to be incredibly hard to see nowadays. I mean, you rarely find a moment where someone's not looking down at a phone or, doesn't want to be removed from whatever online activity that they are doing. They need to be plugged in. And this movie was about unplugging ourselves for once and experiencing our world for what it is and what it needs to be.
The movie could have portrayed that a little better than a weird Manson family terrorist cell bent on destroying iPhones, but no, it was handled really, really quite well throughout the movie. It carried itself fantastically. It had really good characters, really good acting. Again, go see it, man. Go see it, guys. It's just, I've heard a lot of people didn't like it. I've heard a lot of people had mixed feelings about it. I gotta say, for me, I loved it. Fucking loved it.
And here's a little special note for all of you born past 1996. Please watch this movie. I can't say anything more than that. It is imperative that you understand that your generation is going to be the one that is bringing people forward in the next few years.
Fight the urge to say, this is boring, man. There's not enough explosions in this. Don't watch it. Just watch it. Yeah. It's been a night at the theatre.
It's been a very good night at the theatre.
Great night at the theatre.
Excellent night at the theatre.
And now, we will be signing off. I am Paul.
I am Pier.
Have a good night.